Picture this. You're standing on a dusty plain in 331 BC. The sun is blazing, the ground is shaking, and in front of you stretches the biggest army the world has ever seen. Hundreds of thousands of Persians, war elephants, scythed chariots, cavalry as far as the eye can see. And then, on the other side, a smaller Macedonian force led by one very confident guy, Alexander the Great. Spoiler alert, he's about to pull off one of the most insane W's in military history. Welcome to the Battle of Gaugamela. First, let's talk about the setting. Gaugamela was chosen by King Darius III himself, who wanted a nice, wide-open battlefield for his chariots and elephants. Basically, he said, "I'm going to flex my numbers and crush this upstart Macedonian punk." Darius brought somewhere between 200,000 and 1,000 men, depending on which ancient historian you believe, because apparently counting was hard back then. Alexander, he had maybe 40,000 infantry and 7,000 cavalry. That's it. Imagine queuing into a game of Civilization and realizing your opponent spawned with 5 times your units. Most people would hit surrender, not Alexander. So how do you win when you're massively outnumbered? You don't play their game, you make them play yours. Alexander's secret weapon was the Macedonian phalanx, rows of soldiers armed with long spears called sarissas, moving like a giant porcupine of death. Add in his elite companion cavalry, which was basically the ancient version of a tank division, and you've got a recipe for chaos. As the battle begins, Darius unleashes his scythe chariots, basically ancient lawnmowers with blades sticking out of the wheels. It sounds terrifying, but Alexander had a trick. The Macedonian soldiers simply opened gaps in their lines, let the chariots roll through, and then poked the drivers like they were playing whack-a-mole. Not exactly the devastating weapon Darius was hoping for. Then came the Persian cavalry onslaught. They charged hard on Alexander's left flank, and things looked dicey. But here's where Alexander's genius shows. He deliberately extended his right flank, moving diagonally across the battlefield to lure the Persians into overcommitting. It was like dangling bait in front of a hungry fish. Once the Persians stretched too far, Alexander saw his chance. Now imagine this in cinematic slow motion. Alexander, in gleaming armor, mounted on his horse Bucephalus, suddenly pivots with his companion cavalry and charges straight at the Persian center, right where King Darius is chilling on his fancy war chariot. The speed, the precision, the audacity, it's the military equivalent of a 360 no-scope. Darius panics, his bodyguards crumble, and the great king of Persia does what any self-respecting monarch would do. He nopes out of there, fleeing the battlefield faster than you run when your phone battery hits 1%. With Darius gone, the Persian morale collapsed like a Jenga tower in an earthquake. But Alexander didn't chase him immediately. He first circled back to rescue his left flank, where things were still brutal. Even while chasing immortality, he never forgot his soldiers. Once the danger was clear, he turned again to pursue Darius, but the king had already escaped. Persia, however, was finished. Gaugamela marked the end of the Achaemenid Empire. Alexander had just erased centuries of Persian dominance in a single afternoon. Let's pause for a second. Alexander pulled this off while being outnumbered at least 5-1. His army wasn't just smaller, it was exhausted from marching across deserts, while the Persians had the home field advantage. And yet, through discipline, strategy, and guts, the Macedonians didn't just survive, they dominated. Military schools still teach Gaugamela as a masterclass in tactics, right next to Cannae and Waterloo. Only here, Alexander didn't just win the battle, he ended an empire. Now, for some fun facts. Ancient sources say the battlefield was so flat that Darius even had the ground level to make it easier for his chariots. It's like spending hours building the perfect Fortnite map, only to get clapped by some 20-year-old with better reflexes. Also, after the battle, Alexander captured the royal Persian camp, including Darius's family. Talk about awkward. Imagine being the wife and mother of the king, and suddenly you're dining with the guy who just defeated him. To Alexander's credit, he treated them with respect, which earned him even more loyalty across the conquered lands. Another detail: Alexander's soldiers reportedly shouted his name during the charge, creating what must have been the most terrifying hype train in history. Picture thousands of warriors screaming, "Alexander," while sprinting at you with spears. Even elephants would think twice. But the craziest part? Alexander was only 25 years old at Gaugamela. Most of us at 25 are still figuring out how to cook pasta without burning it. Alexander casually destroyed the mightiest empire of his age. Talk about overachiever. The aftermath was huge. With Persia defeated, Alexander declared himself king of Asia and marched into Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis, iconic cities dripping with wealth. His men looted unimaginable treasures, and Alexander staged one of history's most famous victory parades. The world map had officially changed forever. Of course, Alexander wasn't done. Gaugamela was the gateway to even more conquest into Afghanistan, India, and beyond. But the victory sealed his reputation as one of the greatest generals in history. Napoleon studied him, Caesar idolized him, and even today his battlefield moves are broken down by historians like football plays. Gaugamela wasn't just a battle, it was the definition of tactical brilliance. So, what's the lesson here? It's not always about having the biggest army, the strongest weapons, or the flashiest chariots. Sometimes brains beat brawn, discipline beats chaos, and one bold move can change the world. Alexander proved that with a little creativity, a lot of confidence, and just the right amount of recklessness, you can topple an empire. And that's why the Battle of Gaugamela still echoes through history books, video games, and documentaries. It's the story of how one young king, with fewer men and fewer resources, outsmarted and outfought the mightiest empire of his day. Stick around for more epic stories of warriors and battles. And remember, if you don't hit that subscribe button, Alexander might just send his phalanx after you. And trust me, those guys are still scary even 2,000 years later.